Today we are going to do a tool called Implicit Assumptions. A good way to introduce the tool is with a little puzzle. I'm going to give you a couple of puzzles actually to have some fun today. First puzzle, I'm going to give it to you, and I'm going to give you some time for you guys to talk about it and see if you can solve the puzzle. Now listen to the puzzle instructions carefully because there's some very important details. 6 men are locked up in a room. The room is all locked up, they can't get out. The floor is made of concrete, and buried into the concrete at the middle of the floor is a hollow pipe. A pipe about yay long, maybe 4 inches deep, buried inside the concrete, and inside this hollow pipe is a ping pong ball, just barely fits into the hollow pipe, resting at the bottom of that pipe. You are to remove the ping pong ball intact from inside the pipe. Now your fingers won't reach far enough to pick up the ping pong ball, so your fingers aren't going to help. In case you're thinking of sucking it out, by the way, there's no air to fill the bottom in for you to suck it out, so that's not possible. But I am going to give you 3 tools. I'm going to give you 3 tools to pull this ping pong ball out intact. First tool is a piece of string 18.3 centimeters long. The second tool is a sledgehammer 168 kilograms heavy. And the third tool is a calculator without the square root function. Those are the 3 tools you have: the piece of string, the sledgehammer, the calculator. You are to pull this, extract this ping pong ball out intact. I'm going to give you a few minutes for, if you're working with other people, to think about it, solve the problem, and then we'll come back.
And Balaji, just for this one, can I ask you not to go past
Okay.
this point forward? You can pace freely as you want to the side, but don't go too much forward over here.
Okay. I hope you had some fun with that problem. Don't know if you solved the problem, but I'm going to give you a few pieces of hints in case you had not solved the problem, and then I'll give you some more time to think about it. Otherwise, you can just fast forward and get to the other side. I'm going to give a few pieces of hints. I've given this problem to 4th graders, by the way, and 4th graders figure it out in no time. No time at all. 4th graders get it. In fact, when you have mixed company of both genders, the problem turns out to be more difficult than single gender groups. Why don't I give you a few more minutes to think about it, and why don't you come back? Okay, I hope you had some fun with that problem. Maybe you figured out the solution. The solution is quite simple. 6 men, they can easily urinate into that pipe and the ball will float up. Well, why didn't we think about this problem? Before I go there, let me give you another one, something similar, just to have some fun. This problem is about, you have a goat, a lion, and a bale of hay. You are on this side of a river, you have a boat, and you wish to transport all 3 of these items to the other side. Unfortunately, the boat can carry only one of those 3 things on the boat, in addition to yourself, who would have to row the boat across. So you can take one item across at a time. Now, it turns out you can't leave the goat and the hay unsupervised. The goat would eat up the hay. Nor can you leave the lion and the goat unsupervised. The lion is going to eat up the goat. So you've got to make sure you don't leave those pairs unsupervised on one side. Your job is to find a way to transport all 3 of these to the other side. Again, I'll give you a few minutes to do so. Again, I hope you had some fun with that problem as well. the solution to that problem, you might have got it, is actually quite simple. If you recognize that if you were to take the goat over and you come back, take the hay over, you probably figured out you can't leave the hay and come back to get the line. But if you bring the goat back with you, you could take the line over and come back to get the goat. The solution was to bring the goat back with you. Both these problems that I just said became more difficult than they need to be because you had made some implicit assumptions. You had assumed that you were to transport everything from this side to that side, that somehow I had said you cannot bring things back. I never said that, but you had assumed that. Also, you assumed that would be a futile thing to do, to bring something back. So in your space of assumptions, in your space of solutions, you didn't even consider possibilities where you could bring things back. The moment you thought of that, you realize the problem becomes easy. Similarly, back in the ping pong problem, you had assumed, in fact, the moment you came to work and you were with your colleagues watching this video, there was an assumption that you were in a business environment, and in this business environment, certain thoughts and conversations were taboo. So the idea of urinating in a pool is just not something we think about. It's not the kind of conversations we have in a business environment, and so we were trying to solve the problem with assumptions that we had made in our head that prevented us, that blocked certain solutions to even enter our mind. These are called implicit assumptions. Anytime you solve problems, you have implicit assumptions. These assumptions are ones that you have never stated. You can't even think of them. It's hard to write them down, but you have them in your head. As a result, you really exclude a whole bunch of solutions because your implicit assumptions excluded them. Sometimes you exclude some very good solutions, potentially, revolutionary solutions, kind of what they call out of the box solutions, because you had these implicit assumptions. So how do you deal with these implicit assumptions? Well, one way to deal with it is to make them explicit. When you are solving a problem, instead of finding solutions to the problem, start writing down, start making a list of the assumptions you are making. What assumptions are valid and what assumptions are you are just making them. They're really not, they're not constraining. If you make, and by the way, you to start the conversation, start out by we shouldn't be hitting people, we should not be violent to people, we should not steal from others. Come up with some ridiculous ones. But pretty soon you'll get to that point, that edge between what is allowed and what is not allowed. And the assumptions on the edge, those are the ones that really matter. When you get those assumptions on the table, you'll find you generate new solutions that violate some of the assumptions that you had implicitly assumed. Write down the assumptions, make them explicit. Understand your implicit assumptions.